Great. Are they really? Yes. I'm doing really well, or that is, fire. You guys back in? Okay. I did. Pretty good read so far. Thank you.
I look at some of the stuff. All right, so now we're ready to go. We have two meetings this morning, one, the finance committee meeting, and the other one's the board meeting. We'll start with the finance committee meeting. So I'll call it Industrial Development Agency Finance Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to read and approve the minutes of October 24th. I have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I think it's a one.
Yeah, they're just Chet,
that's right.
Joe, and Neil. That's
All
true.
right, sorry.
I'll second. Quarterly finance statement?
So you have the quarterlies. I also distributed them late on Friday. My apologies for the lateness, but I can only send them when I get them. We can start with a balance sheet, if you will. And just scrolling down from an assets point of view, total bank accounts up about $300,000. Obviously, that's from the sale of the property in Mineral Springs. Total assets, pretty much the same story as we go through. Obviously, liabilities are going to be a little lower for whatever reason I'll have to go through. I think a lot of things are going to hit in January that obviously this is through December 31. So I'll have to double check with Lynn and see where things are hitting. But really, I mean, the $7,000 difference in the net long term and 5,000 on the positive side on the oops, sorry, look at the wrong sheet there. And your current liabilities are pretty much lower as well. That $7,500 you can see from escrow was from SSI, and we were instructed by our auditors to move that into our general fund, so that's been done. So you can see why that last year there was $7,500 there, and now there's zero. So that might be a question you might ask.
Just one note on the balance sheet. I would assume that the lands and buildings miscellaneous would have been reduced relative
Yes.
to the sales.
Yes,
We have section on the income side, but not on the.
you're absolutely right. I've got a line on that, and I'll have to double check with Lynn on that. I figured you would catch that, sir. So I just didn't have time to coordinate with our accountant as far as some of these entries are concerned, because I got this so late on Friday. There are several things that I will review with her just to make sure I have a better understanding, and that would be one of the top ones. Because you're right, if we sold the piece of land, then certainly the entry in the balance sheet should go lower. Any questions on the balance sheet? All right. Profit and loss statement. I am working on a report that does a budget to actual. We're not quite there yet, but I think that would be just as helpful, if not than what we have here. From the income side, nothing really is in surprise. Obviously, the gain on the sale of the asset is there, and that's a big difference from previous year. We've obviously recorded the funds from the county coming in, as well as reimbursements for Shad Point for any of the work that has been done there. As far as the expenses are concerned, I don't see much of anything that should be a surprise to the group, but I'm happy to answer questions if I can, or do some digging if the board has any questions on that. Like we're in FinCom right now, and we won't be there very long. Any questions on the income statement? All right, I also provided for the board an investment report, basically the ladder. I call it the ladder. Basically give you the maturity dates and the different CDs or notes that we have out there. They're all currently CDs. Of course, just so you know the amounts and the maturity dates. This is something I keep track of, but I thought it's good for the board to see, when things are maturing and, what the interest rates are on the different investment vehicles. So we do keep track of it, and I will certainly provide it anytime the board wants, but I think on a quarterly basis seems to be reasonable.
And nothing due until April.
April, right, correct. Whatever action we've had recently happened in the last couple of months. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, on financials, unless there are questions from the board.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Second, call to order the IDA Board of Directors meeting.
Call to order at 9:09. Roll call, Mr. Burton.
Here.
Mr. Capani excused, Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Overend.
Present.
Mr. McAllister here.
Second item, approval of the minutes.
One thing, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out, different on the minutes from the version I sent out over the, I guess it would be Friday. If you'll look on page 2, I have a highlighted section that Mr. Trapani wished was reworded. So I have made that change in the minutes, and I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. Because it's just slightly different than what I sent out originally.
Any other comments, corrections? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? That's approved. Bills and communications.
None to report, sir.
Report of the treasurer.
I think we'll address the financial statements below. Otherwise, we don't have a treasurer, so there will be no report from them.
Okay. Committee reports, governance,
Did not meet.
audit,
Did not meet.
finance committee.
Finance Committee reviewed Q2 financial statements and investment statement. And I would ask that the full board accept those financial statements as presented in the Finance Committee.
Have a motion to accept.
I'll make the motion.
Sorry.
Motion approved. Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. First item, Sharon, property update. I have a resolution in front of you, tab 2 in your packet. Legal counsel has advised me that the best way to approach selling the Sharon warehouse property is to do 2 separate resolutions. The one that you have in front of you does an outline of the process and empowers both the chair and the CEO to undertake certain tasks to allow this to happen. As an FYI to the board, we have several folks who are interested in that property, and this will help me move forward on that and getting some written bids. We'll also put in ads in the paper to make this as fair as possible and to try and maximize the price that we can get for that property. But the first step would be this resolution here that I received from council on Friday. And I would ask that the board consider it, please.
anything unusual?
No, it's everything that we need to move forward.
Okay, let's go for a roll call vote.
Just to clear the processes, we're gonna approve this, we're gonna go back to the folks who are interested in the property, and put a listing in, we're gonna set a date when we're gonna require all written offers, terms and conditions.
That is correct. Yep, and I'm gonna make sure that we advertise it so that somebody from the public has the ability to bid on it if they're interested in it. If they, weren't as aggressive as some other people in reaching out to us originally and asking for, hey, what's going on here? Are you selling it? And those kinds of things. So we'll get it out. I'll put it on the website as well. Maybe we'll be fortunate enough that the county will allow us to put it on their website as well, just to get some additional reach. And we'll set a date and we'll try to get that in as quickly as possible so that we can move forward.
Any other comments or questions? Are we ready for a roll call vote?
I'll need an offer in a second.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Burton,
Yes.
Mr. Trapani excused, Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister.
Yes.
Mr. Over.
Yes.
Resolution passes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
When do we want the proposals about? End of February?
Yeah, I'm thinking that's about that. I'll have to look at the calendar and see when we get an extra day in February now, and I think that's a Thursday, so I might make it March 1st as a Friday, just to make it a clear date. Go from there.
Next item, additional repair work.
Yes, I had previously reported to the board that we had performed all repair work that was necessary for the warehouse. And I was under the impression that was the case, but I was recently informed by the property owner right next to our property that water that used to pool underneath these folks' garage now is pooling in their driveway. And given the weather, water turns to ice, obviously, and it's been bitterly cold. So we're gonna have to do some additional mitigation there. I don't know, not being an engineer myself, exactly what needs to get done, but this information is recent to me, but I wanted to make sure the board was aware of it, and I will be working on resolutions. Don't have any hard solutions for you now, but you should be in the loop on this in case somebody were to say something to you.
Well, we had some estimates and stuff, so
We were able to get what I thought was a resolution that the property owner was happy with, and that made sense to me. And the cost of that was $2,000. So I thought that was fairly reasonable. Water being what it's a really bad setup the way it is anyway, because what you have is you've got the runoff from the roof coming down the gutters and into PVC pipes that go to the back corner of the property and kind of dump out I'm not sure who owns that portion of land, but it's pitched out enough so that whatever runs off used to go right underneath the garage that was there. There's a separate garage, and that was causing some heaving when water turned to ice. That has been mitigated, but it doesn't look like the runoff is going right down into the road where it could hit a storm drain. So we're probably going to have to, and again, I'm not an engineer, but logic would tell me that we probably need to dig a deeper trench that's pitched more properly so that it can get to the road. Sorry.
Where you go?
I'm sorry. I don't know if I answered your question, but
yeah. I mean, I know that there was a whole lot of discussion about how to mitigate it. I'm not sure what all that discussion was. I know the one gentleman who showed up at the last meeting was interested in the property, knew about the issue, and had plans to mitigate the issue himself. So I'm wondering if we just disclose that there's some sort of conditions needs to be rectified with a buyer doing it.
that makes a lot of sense. I think the only issue there is the homeowner right next door. I mean, issues with that. Because obviously if his driveway is a sheet of ice, he's let me know a couple of times in a short period of time that, it's an issue and a challenge for him. So I think you're right in those circumstances. The problem is we don't have a lot of land behind that building where we could have something pool into some kind of a storm drain of some sort, or kind of a pond. So we were really at our wits' end as to what to do, given the constraints and the way things were set up. So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what we need to do, but I think we should work on dual tracks there, right? Disclosing that for the next property owner would be great, but if there's something simple we can do to mitigate for the property owner, it might make sense to do that, so that it's not a liability situation.
At least temporary.
There's village sewer and water in front of that, like,
There is,
the storm drain.
there are storm drains,
So
yeah.
then probably the solution is you gotta tie it into the storm drain, which means bring the drain underneath or around the edge of the property back down in.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Or maybe even temporarily now, put pipe right over the ground.
Good, yeah.
All right, any other comments on the repair work needed? Chad Point.
All right, I'm pleased to introduce Michael Madolo from MRB Group. Hello, everyone. MRB Group has provided a proposal for professional services for GIS site design and engineering. That is in your packet. I believe it's tab 3. And so Michael is here to kind of present that, go over the document with you and answer any of your questions. I didn't feel that I was capable of answering any of the technical questions you might have. So Michael was kind enough to join us this morning to be able to provide us with additional support on that, let's put it that way. All right, so you're on, sir.
All right, thank you. Well, good to meet you guys all here. Sorry for being a few minutes late. Got caught in Albany rush hour traffic on the way down. I want to give you guys just a little bit of background before we jump into the proposal to understand how we got to where we are today, right? And why we're going this direction, or hope to go this direction. I believe it was in 2018 or 2019, the county hired a consultant to look at sites across the county, Fairweather Consulting. He identified many different sites, about 40 or 50, and they did an initial characterization of that. A few years later, we were hired, we being MRB Group were hired, to help the county understand, okay, now you know your inventory, what do you need to do, right? What are your top sites and what do you need to do to get them ready for development, right? Get them marketable. So we did a study and we identified the top 3 sites. And the number 1 site was Shad Point in terms of its scale and its development potential. So we presented the 3 sites to the county board of supervisors. We said, for economic development purposes, you should concentrate on these 3. Shad Point is your best option right now. Subsequently to that, we've continued to move forward with this site via the IDA, via the town of Cobleskill and the county. And we said, hey, what needs to happen? One of the reasons why this site is so interesting and why it caught our attention when we did the 2021 study was that right now in the capital region, in the Mohawk Valley, and across all of upstate New York, there are almost no large sites that are available. All the good sites have been taken. In fact, I just saw last Friday, or Thursday or Friday, the governor proposed the budget and specifically noted the lack of large sites in New York and dedicated the next tranche of $100 million of Fast New York money, which is a grant program to help develop sites, that is dedicated to large sites for semiconductors, logistics, and manufacturing. We don't have enough, right? So this site right now is a golf course and a mini golf and a driving range. I'm sure you guys know right off of the exit. It's just a few hundred feet from the on-ramp and off-ramp of I-80. Fortunately, it is on the south side. Well, fortunately, unfortunately, it's on the south side, which means it's not in the middle of the, populated area. It's not in a constrained space area, right? The water and sewer is on the other side of the highway, but for all intents and purposes, we could put something really interesting here without having any significant impacts on residents or, traffic that's going to go through the village or anything like that. So there's a lot of stuff going for this site. the name of the game in economic development right now is time to market. So you need a big site and it's got to be ready, right? Back maybe 20 years ago, when I started economic development, people might wait, right? They find a site, we'll wait, we'll do some analysis, we'll look at it. Right now, if it's not ready to go today, it's not even being considered, right? So all of that was to say, what we're proposing here is to take the site as it stands today and to get it as ready as possible. So that if a developer came, or an end user or developer that came that wanted to develop the site, all of the risk has been taken out. They know everything they need to know about the site. They know how big a building they can have. They know what kind of operations they can have. They know the issues surrounding wetlands and traffic and endangered species and archaeology. All those things have been taken off the table. We know what we need to know, right? They can go straight to the planning board of the town of Cobleskill and ask to have a permit. And that period goes from as much as 18 to 24 months, takes it down to about 3 months total. That's where we need to be, right? We need to be ready to give someone a building permit in 3 months for a large site. So how do we get there? That's what this outlines. This is the first phase, but most of the work of getting us from where we are today to that point. The first step, task A here. And you'll have to, there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of acronyms. I'm going to help you through that. Task A is to get us ready to do a GEIS, not to do a GEIS, but to get us ready for that. You guys all know seeker. You've all been involved in passing seeker resolutions, right? A GEIS is a special kind of seeker resolution. It basically says, we're looking at this site generically, not for a specific project, but for a range of potential projects. Once we get that GEIS done, seeker's done for the site forever. We never have to go back and redo seeker, right? So your actions, the actions of the town, the actions of the county will all rely on the GEIS, okay? The first step is A. We need to know what needs to be done to do a GEIS. How do we do that? You can see right here. We have to talk to SHPO. We have to talk to Ag and Markets. We have to talk to DEC. We have to talk to Fish and Wildlife. We have to talk, well, we don't think we have to talk to the Army Corps of Engineers. We'll see. And we need to do some investigation of the site, DOT in particular. Why do we do this? Because all of these agencies will tell us in these consultations what they will require us to do in the GEIS, right? So this whole first stage is basically telling us what are we going to need to do in the GEIS. Okay, task B, site design. We need to know more about the site than we know today. Well, we're talking to the agencies, we're getting that list of tasks that we need done. Now we're doing some more, at the same time, we're doing some additional site investigation. We need an up-to-date boundary survey, a topographic survey, and a utility survey. Where are all these things? Where are they going? What's involved in all this? Are there any easements? Are there any site topographical issues that we have to worry about? Number two, we need to know more about the soils. We know some of the soils in the surrounding areas. We know approximately what the soils are at this site, but we need to know a lot more because that will determine things like foundations and entrance and egress and what areas we might need to avoid and some other considerations with respect to stormwater in particular. We need a more developed site plan. Now, we did a very preliminary site plan where we established that we could fit roughly a 750,000 square foot building, right? But to get from that to a true conceptual site plan, we need to do some more layout, grading, stormwater and drainage, utility plan, and this construction detail, which is going to take the information from the topographic survey and help us translate that into what this site could look like. We need a couple of sub-consultants to do number 1 and number 2 on B here. And that gets us through to an actual site plan that we can put in front of a planning board, a zoning board of appeals, wherever we need to put it, right? The last step for this phase is C. North of the interchange is where the water, sewer, gas all terminate. We already know from the soils that we can do what's called the directional bore to get underneath the underpass, which is great because means we're not blasting rock. We're not trying to bore through the side of the interstate. We can go right under it, put it into the ground, right? And a directional bore also avoids having to block off that underpass, which would be a really difficult thing. So we can get around most of that, but we need to get these utilities there. So we need an engineering analysis of what it's going to take, where those are going to run, what are the obstacles we might run into, and exactly what that design is. That will also give us a very good cost estimate of what it will cost to put those utilities in and how long it's going to take. We're not saying go in and put the utilities in. We're saying do everything you need to know to understand what you need to do and how much it's going to cost. And that's it. That's the proposal. And I think I've explained why we're doing it this way. The next question I'm sure you're going to have is, well, what comes next, right? Well, what comes next is the GEIS. That would be a separate process, right? But now we know what we have to do. We know what it's going to take to get the utilities there. We know everything we need to know about the site to put together a site plan, a competent site plan. And then the next step is we actually begin the GEIS. And that's where DOT's mandated traffic study. Okay, well, we hire traffic engineer, right? We submit the stormwater management plan and we do the hydrogeology around, right? We fulfill all the steps that we found were required to finish the GEIS. That's a long process. It involves a lot of individual experts. Actually, was anybody, this just happened up in Schoharie at the next exit up. Were you guys familiar with that process, what happened and all that? They did very familiar, okay. They did a very similar process up there to do a GEIS on a significant parcel up there to pre-permit, if you will, a 550,000 square foot facility plus I think it was like a gas station and a little mini one, right? So they just went through this process, did the same thing. So that's what would happen after this. This is getting us all to that point where we know we can step forward competent. I'll stop there. I'm talking quite a bit here. Happy to answer questions. I can talk about more steps later on or other things that are going on right now related to this, but I wanted to make sure you guys understood how we got here and what this is actually proposing to do.
Let's assume someone, after we get this done, someone comes in, they want the property. Do they compensate us back for these costs?
That's up to you. I would recommend that. I mean, I think it would make
Is that
sense,
normal?
right? Yes, that's very normal.
They know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now, the IDA has a purchase option on the property for roughly $800,000, right? That property is going to be worth a lot more than $800,000 if it's fully approved, right? And if all the engineering is done for the utilities. So it's reasonable for you to take the increment, right? Now, there's a few little complications around the option agreement that you have. I wouldn't just charge a higher price. I would specifically call out a reimbursement of cost. Otherwise, we owe the property owner a little increment for that, increased price that we sell it for. But yes, you would most likely recover that. In fact, I would think almost certain you would recover that.
Of the additional services on Roman numeral 4.
Yep.
How many of these do you think we would require? In other words, there's a lot here that I thought some of which would be part of
Yep.
the original estimates. You know, noise, traffic.
Yep.
It seems that you've got to do that. I mean.
We
you know,
have to do it, but we don't know what DOT will require us to do for the traffic study, right? They may say, oh, you know, for a project this size, you have to look at it with a turning lane, without a turning lane, with a, you know, a signalization at that site, with whatever it is,
So you
right?
don't know what it is.
You don't know what
that
they're gonna
these-
require.
These points would
That's right.
require, that's why they're additional. At this point.
Wetlands delineation is another one. This site doesn't have any significant wetlands that we need to worry about. But that doesn't mean that they're not gonna require us to go back into wetlands delineation. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I think they probably will. But why would I spend your money on a wetlands delineation if you don't absolutely have to do it, right? They may only require a portion of the site be delineated, right? I don't know. We'll see. Noise, light, and glare is kind of an interesting one. That will largely be driven by the public process and whether or not that comes up as a significant potential impact that the public wants studied in this. I don't imagine an agency would require that. It's possible. Archaeological, it doesn't seem like we have a lot of issues there, but again, one of these agencies may say you got to do a phase one, phase two, 2B, whatever it is, right? They'll tell us these things. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of negotiating power because if we decide to fight them on it, then we spend the next year fighting them on it and we might lose, right? So it's really just better to, if they say you got to do a phase 2B archaeological, we just do it, right? So yes, that's why.
Okay. I had another question about in the site design where you speak to the number of meetings that you guys would attend.
Yes.
And you, one of them in number 4 in site design is one working group meeting. I think that's ambitious. It seems like there's going to be a lot of hand holding, a lot of explanation to the community on this. So if other meetings, I mean, would you, I guess, would you charge on an hourly basis? How is the extra meetings and other work that you might have to do charged? You don't have, you know, even for those other services,
Yep.
you don't have a charge here. Does it depend on the thing?
Yeah.
I'll
Well, so there's one working committee meeting part of that, and number C, there's 4 additional working
right.
committee meetings. That's for the engineers, right? In terms of their work. I can be here whenever you need me to be here, and I would just charge you for time, right? So I'm up in Saratoga, I'm just a short ways away.
So is there an hourly charge that you,
Yes,
just so
yeah.
we know what the potential costs of some of these things
Yeah.
are? That's the only question I have.
Yeah.
And
Okay, what I'll say is this, I'm not gonna nickel and dime you, right? And any meeting you want me to be at remotely, I'm just gonna do it for free. I'm not gonna charge you for it, right?
Yeah.
But if you want me to come down and prepare a PowerPoint presentation and go in front of a committee or go in front of the public and talk about, I will have to charge you hourly.
Sure.
You know,
what would that hourly rate be?
my hourly rate is $275, my associate is $155.
We'll take it.
So, you know,
So,
We'll take it.
okay, very good.
Anybody at this table would say that.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
Roughly, how long will this process take? I know there's a lot of.
Yeah.
Ifs in here and all that, but just give me an idea of what we're talking about. Minimum.
The entire GEIS as a total is gonna take at least 18 months. It just takes forever to do all these things, right? This is more of what you're seeing right here, this initial phase is more of about 6-month work, right? But once we have that list, well, now we have to go out and we have to find a wetlands person, we have to find a traffic person, we have to get them to bid. We have to select them, we have to put them under contract, we have to do the work, we have to have it back, right? You gotta present it to the planning board.
So you're looking at a 2-year time frame process.
About 18 months, yeah. So the 6 months is part of the 18
Okay,
months,
sorry.
yeah. I mean, it could go, it's not unusual for them to go to 2 years, but we are hoping to get it done in 18 months. Other questions?
How did this proposal come about, I guess? And why did we end up with a proposal for this service?
So the next step, and so the board has charged me with moving this forward, right? So we've got the options agreement, check mark, we've got the preferred developer, check mark. The next step is to get us prepared to get through the secret process and the GEIS process. And so discussions with different partners, including MRB, who's done work for this site in the past, this was the next iteration.
So the whole reason we did an RFQ for developers is because the developer is going to handle this entire process. That's the point of hiring the developer. You're
You're gonna handle this process.
no, we're not. We're going to coordinate with the developer. The developer is going to lead this process. We're going to coordinate with the developer. We're going to
Respectfully,
lead-
that's not how it's gonna happen. Now, normally, if we had a developer for a specific project or a tenant involved, you're right, the developer would lead it, right? You guys are the site control entity, right? You're the ones that have site control. So your name will be on the application
Sure,
and you're gonna be running this process.
and that's okay, but the reason we have the developers involved in the process is so that they can hire their professional groups. And if our name's on the application, that's fine. The reimbursement's coming through the ARPA funds regardless of when, the structure, but it's because they're going to buy the project when it's complete and shovel ready. So they're going to want to use their own people, create their own site plans, do their own. I mean, we can make a site plan, we can make 10 iterations of a site plan, but somebody's going to come along and buy the project and they're going to develop what they want to develop on the site.
Okay, so I think we're talking about two different things here. One is getting us through a GEIS. That will be the IDA's work, right? We have a GEIS that allows a number of different uses, right? Now, we have found, or our developers found, an actual user for the site. Then yes, they're gonna design the site and they're gonna push it forward from there. But it's really gonna be up to us to get it to shovel ready. And that's what this is. So this is not gonna be for a specific user. This is gonna be for a generic user, right? That's why it's a GEIS. The developer's really not gonna be substantially involved until a tenant is identified.
That's not the way we've structured the RFQ with them. That's
Have
not,
you seen-
that's not the involvement we've asked for with the RFQ. The RFQ asks them to lead the process to approval of the site.
So we've had two responses to the RFQ.
Mhm.
Both of those responses have said that they want the IDA to lead the GEIS process.
Well, I think I gotta read it again, but I think the one indicated that they would lead all site plan approvals. They would do everything to get the site fully approved. They wanted us to spend $1 million on infrastructure.
Well, we'll have to go back and look at that proposal then. I remember differently. I could be wrong, right? I think maybe what we can do is this. If we want to think about how this is going to go down, whether or not the IDA is leading or the developer is leading, the work still needs to get done, right?
Sure.
And the work is ultimately going to pay for the ARPA money. I think this gets you moving. And then the GIS happens afterwards, right? Is the next step. I think it's unlikely from what my read of the two proposals that the developer is going to pay for this at this point. That'd be great if they did, but I just don't think they are.
And I don't expect them to pay for it. I expect that we're gonna figure out the legalities of funneling the funds from ARPA through the IDA
Yeah.
to the professionals actually doing the work. But the point of doing the RFQ was so that we could identify a developer who's going to buy the site, and we could approve it and get it shovel ready to their specs. So that when it's shovel ready and it's approved and we've identified how we're gonna get the utilities to the site, they're gonna buy the project at a greater value than what we've paid for it.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's a bid for the IDA. And they're gonna go do the project, but having them involved at this point, this juncture where we are with the land. The whole point was so that we know we're developing it, getting approvals, doing site plans, doing whatever to their specs so that we have an end user ready to go. Not so that we do this stuff and then hope someone comes and buys our vision for the site.
I guess maybe I'm a little confused then. Our vision of the site is to get it shovel ready at this point, right? And we would do it in a way that would allow a number of different end users of the site. So I don't know how that would be different if the developer's doing it or we're doing it. It's still just a way to get through seeker.
Sure. Subtotal part B, site design plans include advanced conceptual site design plans for proposed development areas.
Yep.
Right?
So that's what's called a maximum build, right? We're going, for the purpose of the GEIS, we want to make the biggest possible development that could possibly fit on this site, right? We say this is the biggest, we don't know what the tenant is. We don't even know exactly what they're going to be doing, but this is the biggest building we can fit there, right? That way, when the tenant's identified and when the developer's ready to buy the property and build that, as long as they are proposing something at or less than the maximum build, they don't have to go through seeker again, right? Seeker's done. So that's what this conceptual site plan design is what is the biggest possible building you can put on that site, right?
Sure.
So we don't need a developer to tell us how they want that end user to look. We just need to figure out what's the biggest building we can put on the site. As far as the other, so that covers all the things related to things like, you know, the traffic, for example, right?
Slip, right,
Yeah.
yeah, all.
But we'd go in there and we'd also say, okay, well, if we get a really high intensity user in terms of like people, right? Okay, well, then we need the maximum build for the purpose of the traffic study is the maximum number of cars coming in and out of it, right?
Mhm.
And that may not be the biggest building, that might be a smaller building, but there's got more people coming and going, right? We need to think about it for the GEIS is what are the maximum potential environmental impacts of whatever project that could possibly go there. Study that, get it approved.
And you
I
say the
really don't-
developer, the developer wouldn't have to do that if you do that, but suppose the
Correct.
developer has a different, not the maximum, the developer has a smaller project in mind.
Yep.
And that developer would still want all of this
Yes.
done by you, but not by him or her.
100%. That's exactly what they want. Because they're proposing something less than the maximum build.
Yeah.
So they know when they say, yes, I'm gonna buy this property, they don't have to go through seeker again.
They don't have to go to seeker again, but if they would do some of this stuff,
Right.
also they wouldn't have to go to seeker again.
And that's been, right, and then again, that's why we did the RFQs to say, this is the developers
Right.
handling what you're doing for
Right.
$275 an hour, which is to coordinate the professionals to do the work and pull the reports and do whatever, and we're familiar, certainly very familiar with the High Bridge project. And
Yeah.
I'm sure McFarland Johnson does a lot of this work for them, and, you know, they probably coordinate a lot of this work directly themselves, right? And that's their upshot, is that we're gonna spend $1 million if
Yeah.
they do the legwork, they put in the sweat equity, right? So that's what I'm struggling with, is why do we do this stuff and spend 180 grand now? When the developer may do it for quite a bit less money and to their own specific customized spec for the site.
I don't think the developer's process is gonna be any different than this. But I guess what I don't understand is, I think you're saying the developer's got to be in the driver's seat for this process, right? Is that what you're saying?
I would like them, that was the whole reason I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, as a board, the whole reason we did an RFQ is because we said one of two things. Either we're going to lead the project, either way, we're gonna lead the project, but either we're gonna have IDA staff make the call to the geotech guys, make the calls to surveyors, make the call to
Yeah.
for an archaeological study, do all that kind of stuff, and we're gonna do all that and coordinate everything. Or we're gonna hire a developer, we're gonna select a developer via an RFQ process who wants to develop the site and buy it from us when it's shovel ready and fully approved. And we're gonna put them in the seat to lead, and we're gonna pay to have all the work done, but they're gonna be able to do all of this and lead this process so that we don't expend our time leading that process.
So in fact, what you're saying is finish the developer selection process. Go through the negotiations with them, get them under contract with an understanding of what those pros and cons are, whatever that kind of thing. And then they begin the GEIS process.
Yes,
Okay, so you're already putting it out probably 4 or 5 months, right?
no, I wouldn't say so. I'm hopeful, we've got to have some discussions about the RFQ process yet, about the selection. I think we're considering how we were looking at this if we had 6 applications or something, but, I think it's 30 days to select a developer and start the process.
Right, then you have to go through contract negotiations with them, and then they have to spec it out and put it together. I do have the 2 proposals here. Obviously, I've taken a look through them. I'm certain that the Scannell one is quite explicit about the IDA doing the due diligence. My read of this from Hybrid is the same, that they're looking for the county or the IDA to undertake the due diligence. So I guess I just don't see how, I mean, maybe you can point me to where in the proposal they say that they're gonna do the GEIS work. Because I didn't see it. In
I'll
fact,
have
I
to
saw,
go- Yeah, I mean, we may have to go back and ask the question more specifically, but that's what the RFQ, the document we sent out for RFQ requested and required of the applicant.
okay,
I mean, we can certainly look at potentially pivoting from that idea, but I'm not 100% sure that it makes sense for me anyways, if it's my decision. And I would think that before we selected your proposal, we should look at 3 or so other proposals to do the same services and get some other quotes. And I think that's going to take a little bit of time too.
okay, I mean, I'll go back and I'll find the exact, in the Scannell one, I know right here, right? You can choose to do that. I'm not sure it's gonna get you anything that, it's gonna be any advantage, and it's gonna delay the process. So if that's the way the IDA wants to go, it's obviously your choice. I just think you're gonna kick it down the road a few months. And then I think you're gonna be in the same spot. So it's up to you guys.
Myself, I would prefer to go the direction that we talked about. I think it's gonna be quicker. I think you're gonna have a developer really look hard and long at this before they want to do like this. But maybe I'm wrong. Do you think those proposals indicated that they were gonna do this?
I'd have to refer back to them. We all,
And we ought to really quickly do that, but I mean, if that is the case, and if you're right, then we'll make decisions quickly on the developer and move. Otherwise, we're gonna screw around for another couple of months.
The Scannell proposal didn't go to any detail at all.
If we're
Most of
gonna,
it was just telling us about that.
if we're gonna spend if we're gonna delay at all in this process, I think we're better doing it now and spending time asking these questions with the developers and figuring out exactly, making sure we're all have the same goal in mind and who's handling what, right? Scopes of work and all that. and then making a decision whether or not this is the route we want to go, or if we want to hand it off to the developer. I think we're better off spending time doing it now than making the wrong decision and spending money on things that may not necessarily be
I
necessary.
don't mind that, except then we gotta move on this very quickly.
Agree with that. Agree with that.
We only got two proposals at this point.
That's
Time's
right.
already up.
Yes, yeah,
So that, we got two proposals.
that is correct.
We ought to be able to get back to them very quickly. And say, here's what we expect. Is that what you intended? And go from
Sure.
there.
I mean, part of it is, do we want to stick with the two committee model that we discussed? Since we only have two proposals to look at.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Do we want to go back to one? Do we want to work on this as a board with some expertise and outside opinion? What's the way we want to actually handle reviewing these? And I think we got to spend some time. I've got some basic questions just based on my read of the proposals, given some of the points Mike's made. I'd like to go back and read through them again and, really make an email with some questions. But I think if we all do that and get it submitted in the next 2 weeks to the developer, we should have some answers by next board meeting, potentially be able to make a decision.
Well, the first step then should be go check with both of these people, see if they agreed, or these companies, and see if what we have here is what they were gonna do. That's the
It's
first question.
exactly what Highbridge did, and it's what SCIDA is proposing to do. It's what Highbridge did in Schoharie. It's what SCIDA is proposing to do here. So they're gonna follow the same process. They're gonna have to go to the consultations, different agencies, they're gonna do the maximum build. They're gonna, do infrastructure engineering, they're gonna move forward. So they're gonna have to do all the same things. There's nothing on here that doesn't have to get done.
I understand that. We want to find out if
I
they,
think we can ask that question right away,
right,
to both of them,
right,
and have that answer as soon as we ask.
absolutely.
I mean, it takes a phone call, and we know immediately whether or not the direction that Mike is proposing here is the one we need to go, regardless of what we asked in our RFQ, if that's the way they're operating.
Okay. Paul?
Is that really an issue, Ben, if we were to go with this direction in the end? I mean, based on what we're required in the RFQ for you?
Some of the work is certainly necessary and some of it will not change relative to whatever the user ends up being. And I think some of it would potentially change. And, respectfully, like I would get another 3 quotes before, and understand like this, like experience, qualifications, all that kind of stuff. And look at a few other quotes before we made a decision. I mean, it's a lot of money and my gut tells me like if a developer did the same scope of work, it's probably considerably less for them to do it directly. But they don't have the same overhead that you would have involved in the process, right? Which is part of the consideration, I think, for us is we've got a finite amount of money to deal with to make sure that we get through everything we've discussed and potentially more. So I want to make sure we spend the money as efficiently as possible too. Again, I'm only one vote on this, so I mean, that's, you guys should weigh
Well,
in.
your point is a good point. I think we have to make the call, get the answer, and then go from there.
My understanding going into the process
Well-
of the RFQ was that we were,
But maybe that was what they have is a different understanding. We gotta find out.
But in the end, my point was earlier, in the end, if the developer says, yes, we want you to do this, right? It's not gonna happen the other way.
right.
So,
I mean,
once we
then-
get that answer, we'll know whether or not which direction to pursue.
Yeah, if I'm the developer, I'm likely wanting to oversee most of this process myself, and it gets done with my people the way I want it to be done. And, within my budget, because frankly, part of the negotiation with either of these groups is gonna be, what's the purchase price of the land at the end of the day? And if we do all this sweat equity and put in all this time and handle all the approvals, We want to see some benefit from that.
So we need to see if the other developers agree with you as the developer and your point,
Sure.
so.
So if you were a developer
We-
and you had,
we-
you had a vision of something, a smaller project, for example, or a smaller building, where a lot of this stuff wouldn't be necessary. You would have your own people, I don't want words in your mouth, but you would have your own people doing it. You just go, I need to do this, I don't need to do this, because this is what I'm gonna do.
We have two site plans, two potential projects that are vastly different
Right.
already, right?
Right.
And so if we conceptualize the
That's my
site
point.
plan as maximum square footage and somebody comes in and says, no, I want to do something a little
That-
different,
yeah.
smaller, different usage or whatever. I mean,
But I don't think the process is gonna be any different because of that process. Maybe I'm wrong.
well, we've already spent the money and now the developer needs to spend that money redoing what they
Right.
believe
They want to
their
do.
use is.
Right.
Let's
Not
talk
if you
to
do a
them.
max build. Max build, they can do whatever they want on the site. You want to build a smaller building, build a smaller building. You want to build 10 smaller buildings, you build 10, right? That's the point of the GES. So you don't have to worry about that at this point.
Mhm.
All right, I think we understand what we have to go with this. Have to make some phone calls and then we'll move from there.
But your point is if they say, no, we expect that to be done first, you're saying we should get 2 or 3 proposals for doing this. That's what you're saying.
I would, yeah,
No, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
I don't normally buy,
Yeah, no.
concrete for the first guy. I get a
I'm not
quote for
disagreeing
it.
with you. I just want to make sure that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I would do.
Well, I think we might be required to do that.
Yeah, right. Or I don't know our procurement policy.
well,
Well, this is a professional services contract. You wouldn't have to go out to bid for this. Or RFQ or RFP, you wouldn't have to. You
But
could,
we aren't gonna ding around, that's for sure.
Right.
We're gonna take 4 months to figure out who we're gonna hire.
Agree.
So that's
Sorry.
the answer.
So- As professional services, we don't have to go out for bid.
that is correct.
So
But if
as
you
soon
want-
as soon as we make the phone calls, then we're ready to go. All right,
But if you were thinking about putting it
Ben,
out to
do you
bid,
agree?
I think we make the phone calls and, let's see what comes out of it.
Good.
Get back to us also.
Okay.
We want this done before the next meeting.
I would think we want to do it this week.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Probably later on today would be when the phone calls will be placed. The answers, can't answer that.
So then the order of operations would be, we get answers to these questions from the two proposers. You guys understand what they want from you, what they're willing to do. Then you guys select which one that you want to work with. And then that determines how you guys want to move forward. Is that what it is?
Not sure.
Because then, right,
It'll have to be.
right.
Yes.
Well, because one proposal, we choose one proposal different from the other proposal, different tasks have to be accomplished. So,
I mean, I think understanding if we're gonna lead or they're gonna lead the GEIS process is only one question. The other things that we need to review in the proposals are economic benefit to the
Yeah,
community,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Go through
yeah.
developer experience and all that kind of stuff and determine which of the two proposals we like. And
Right.
the one that says, you guys go figure it out, may or may not be the ones that we like better.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
So I think we really gotta understand the two proposals and go through the questioning and then have a full view of what looks like.
You're going to speak to the committee structure.
Yeah, Ben brought it up and I think when we originally spoke last meeting about putting together evaluation and support committees, I think the assumption was we were gonna get numerous RFQ submissions. And we only, as you know, received 2. And it might make sense to maybe shorten that whole evaluation period. I think in my opinion, my recommendation would be to still get the feedback from the community leaders because they're the ones who are going to have to end up championing this to the public. But there may be less value in having a technical committee than there was when we thought there might be numerous numerous RFQ submissions. My recommendation would be to have a working group of the board get together fairly quickly, right? And simultaneously have the community folks get together and review and make a recommendation. Take that recommendation to the working group. We can do that without there being a public meeting. I've checked that with legal, and they're okay with that. So the group can get together and discuss this and not necessarily make a decision, but maybe start coming to a consensus that they could utilize for the next meeting and make some decisions on the preferred developer. So I would make that recommendation to the board for no other reason than the fact that we didn't get numerous submissions. We can probably cut back on the process a little bit and be more effective and efficient at it. My 2 cents.
Good
We probably should just do the entire board as the working group.
Yes. Yes, that was my thought. I should have been more clear. Thank you for that.
Do I have a motion on that process?
So,
Second?
I'll say.
no, I apologize. I'm sure I understand. Is there gonna be one committee then? Or is it,
Maybe the board.
Two.
it's still gonna be two?
Yeah.
Okay,
No. I-
say, that's why I want to make sure.
We're
I
gonna
understand.
solicit input from the community.
That's not what,
Well,
In
the
the,
county,
uh,
the
yeah.
town, are they gonna be part of that meeting? That's what I'm asking.
I envision it as they get together on their own, and you're leading that charge, as a matter of fact, so I'm glad that you asked the question. And go through it and make their recommendation. We'll get the working group together of the 5 members of the IDA board, take their information and their thoughts into consideration as they work through both of the.
I misunderstood it.
Yeah, unless you want to do it differently. My recommendation was to do it that way, but if you wanted to invite
No, I
those
just
folks
wanna
in,
make sure
that's
it was
okay
clear.
too.
I mean,
with your motion?
Well, no, I'm not gonna make that motion, but I mean, I understand what it is now, and I that's why I ask it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
if we're just bringing in you guys, why don't we just all meet together and have one meeting?
Well, because you only got 2, I don't see why we don't do it that way. It just makes sense,
Yeah.
Right.
you know?
I think the best thing is, let's
Let's do
review,
it.
let's all review the proposals, give Fonda's questions. Let them parse through the questions, get a solid list for each developer, send them back, get the answers and try to meet together once we have the answers.
Well,
Discuss them.
let's, yeah, but all of us.
Right, agreed,
Yes.
yes.
So,
And that's what I thought I was making. a motion
Okay.
for.
That's what I thought I was seconding, so.
okay,
No, think, right.
we're all set now?
Yeah.
All in
So we're
favor?
doing
Are we?
one, we're
Yeah.
doing one.
One committee.
Everybody.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none,
We can
motion
make
is
this
passed.
conference. Yeah.
So Leo amend on a second, is that still the
Yes,
case?
sure. Yeah.
Very good. Okay.
Michael, thank you for coming in and
Thank you, guys.
explaining to us your part of this. That'll help us work through our analysis on how we're going to proceed, and we'll get back to you.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to catch his eye. I wasn't looking at you.
Yeah, at the very least, Canal was very eager to use the early
Yeah.
So. Whether that council is turning over the money to them, do it or not.
Thank you for coming, Werner. New business, potential projects.
Okay, I just wanted to let the board know that there are a couple of potential projects in the mix. A couple of developers have reached out to me asking about IGA benefits and those kinds of things. I don't know where they're going to go to, but there is a little action going on, and I just thought that it behoove the board to know that, people are asking the questions and that's not necessarily the worst thing ever.
Was this specifically for Shaft Point?
No, different developers beyond that. I think that the assumption is that there will be a project with Shaft Point that the IDA will give benefit to. But above and beyond that, there are a couple of other folks that have reached out. Nothing concrete, nothing definitive at the moment. But there is some movement and some action, and I just thought that,
Do you think this is a result of the new UTEP?
I think one of them could very well be. They did ask about that and then said, my understanding is this, and so they had clearly looked at it. So that is a possibility. The other one is more of me just getting out there and doing some marketing.
Try to get home builders interested.
Indeed.
Anything else under potential projects?
No, I just wanted to give that a heads up, nothing actionable at this point.
Other,
All right, quite a few FYI items. As you saw, Mr. Hempel is here. He has been named the new chair of the Economic Development Committee. So I thought that was a piece of information that the IDA board should be aware of. Sarah Nickel, who previously worked as a contract person for the IDA, has agreed to come back on a part-time basis and support the IDA. And that should give us additional capacity and Sarah's knowledge and context will be very helpful to me as we move forward on this. So I just wanted to let the board know about that. There is a collaboration between the different major economic development forces that has started to happen. That is the IDA, along with SEEK, SUNY, the county, and Destination Marketing are starting to meet on a regular basis. At first, every couple of weeks. Eventually, it'll probably be on a monthly basis to share information, to start developing roles and different. Basically, it's just developing some trust and some relationships between the groups so that everybody can start working together when it makes sense to do so, when there's kind of some common tasks. Obviously, we all have our own roles to play, and I think that's important to continue to do. But there will be some opportunities to be synergetic, and in those circumstances, this collaboration will be very helpful in getting everybody to work together for common good, common causes.
Well needed.
Well,
Yeah.
I am very hopeful that this will be a very positive development,
Yep.
and I look forward to being a part of it.
Yep.
Next item up for discussion is, or at least as an FYI, is I've been working with some folks to revamp the IDA's website. It is live, up and running. I can't say it's perfect, but it's better than it was. Patsy, thank you for letting me know that there was an imperfection in it. As part of that, I wanted to add a page that lists the names and kind of the qualifications of the members of the IDA board. So I handed out a separate packet with your name on it, the committees that you're on. And the blank part of it is how you would like that verbiage to look if you wanted to provide that to me so that I could put a little blurb. The other thing I would ask is next meeting, I'd like to take pictures of everybody so we can put a picture along with the name and all that. Just really make the site professional as we can. So if you could bring back that one pager with just how you want the qualifications to look like on the website, we'll transport that information onto the website and on that page so that so that can be taken care of. And anybody who's looking at our website can have that information.
So this is a new RFQ. Request for qualification.
Yes, it is. Yes. In a less formal way. Remember, we're recording. I don't want anybody to get. But I think having an organized website was important. I thought to have. I know when I was trying to navigate it, it wasn't the easiest. So it's not perfect. We've got a lot of work to do on it, but we're making strides.
With respect to the website, there are people who do what they call website optimizations. And I have a feeling not many people go to this website. No, people don't go to a lot of website. People do a lot of work. Clinkhart Hall has one and a lot of work. But I think part of this website work should be something where somebody somebody does a search and uses a term maybe that we didn't think about. Somebody, and that moves us from when you go to Google and you have the sponsored sites, right? And then you have everybody else, okay? So the everybody else is, without having to sponsor a site, what optimization does is make the everybody else is would be everybody else and moving it up close to the sponsored site. And I know of a business that does this. I'm not saying we should use this business, but it does this and has created leads for another business. And that other business hasn't gotten these leads because people might be looking for, oh, I'd like to build a building, somewhere and in New York State, upstate New York. They may not go to our website for that, but the search that says, I want to build a building somewhere, the optimization would trigger that our website very high on the list of when they do searches like that. It's just a thought since we're working on the website. Now, don't ask me how much these things cost. I don't know who's the expertise in that, but person I know is a young person, so
SEO,
as they all are, right?
Sorry?
But
SEO stuff.
but we spend all this money on websites and websites, you don't get the views. It all goes on them. Anyway, that was just a random babble.
Yeah, and of course, we're required to put an awful lot of stuff on our website.
Yes.
Bylaws.
Yes.
Enabling legislation. Every meeting that's ever been held, and that's, so there should be a way of optimizing within the website.
Yeah. Well, that's what they do. Within the website, they make sure the terms are such that a random user or not so random user would use and say, oh, well, this goes up on the scale when you do a Google search.
Right.
Which I found pretty interesting.
There's a way to do that. There
Yeah.
are people that have
Yeah.
experience in knowing how to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just a matter of spending a little bit more money.
Well, I mean, we're spending money on the website. I guess that's the problem.
But it's something you maybe should ask a question.
No, I'll dig into it.
You're dealing with.
I'm not the techiest person in the world. I get by, but it's always good to have a second set of eyes thinking about these things. So I'll ask the question. We'll see what we can come up with. Okay, moving on from that. There is increasingly opportunities to utilize ACH payments to more efficiently pay some bills. In particular, health insurance premiums can now be paid via ACH, and that is much more efficient than our current system. But there are some other opportunities as well, and I wanted to kind of poll the board as to if they're interested in moving forward with doing some of that. What I probably would do is use the debit card account as opposed to our general account, which would limit our liability on some of that stuff. So, if that information gets out, the maximum we could ever lose on that is $5,000 because we'll never have more than $5,000 in that account. But I thought, given the inefficiencies that we have built into our payment system, which in many regards is important to have, right? Because it ends up being a check. There are some operational costs that the last thing we want to do is, incur late payments or not pay a bill on time. I'm thinking NYSEG, National Grid, and the health insurance premiums off the top of my head. But there's also some situations where Microsoft Office is a monthly subscription. We could possibly do an ACH and maybe save a couple of pennies there from a processing standpoint. We also have a couple of other small technology costs that could be wrapped up into this as well. And again, just would make it more efficient. We're not cutting checks, easily traceable, and I just thought I'd throw that out and see if there's a preference one way or the other, if you're okay to move forward on some of that stuff, or if you want to take some time to think about it, but I wanted to bring up that discussion point.
You're only looking at 3 or 4, maybe 5 potentials, and they're all pretty much set, I think. It's not like there's.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Yeah, I mean, they would be recurring and you'd see
Yeah,
the
of
same,
course.
you know, obviously the utilities are gonna be different from month to month from the amount, but not the entry itself.
You say you would see it, that you would have a report to go to the audit committee, or how would that work? For the
Next-
internal control purposes.
Next month, I will ask that we hold an annual meeting, and at that annual meeting, you'll be asked to elect a treasurer. And what I would ask of that treasurer is to meet with us on a regular basis to review all of those things.
So that makes sense to me.
So have some sort of policy, you have to have a policy around ACH, same with a credit card policy or anything like that, or is it?
I will check with the auditor to see, and I will check with legal to see if that's necessary. I would almost think that the debit card policy would fit quite nicely with that, because there is a system and a process to review all of those costs.
Sure, and I think from that standpoint, the only other potential risk variable relative to an audit would be the reconciliation of the bank account. So, someone is reckoning it different than, you know, it's probably fine.
And that's one of the nice things about having Sarah come on board. Those are things that she can do. Right now, the accountant is doing that on a semi-regular basis.
Semi-regular.
Doesn't want to put his last name on there.
What does that mean? That means that it gets done. We're working on it. So,
Yeah, no, I think that sounds like a good idea. We do that at Seek, where most of our bills, we just write the electronic, so I do it.
Do we need a motion on this? Or just,
I'll make it. No.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Approved.
thank you for that. I think I've already alluded to this. The next IDA meeting, I would ask be an organizational annual meeting. We'd also need to do the same for the CRC, although it'll be much shorter. So I know we're at the end of our agenda, so we would generally pick a date and time, but I wanted to make sure that everybody was okay with having it as an annual meeting. So obviously we'll do regular business, but on top of that, we'll assign committees, elect officers and such. You may also want to set a date for the working group as well, or at least think about, what week. And then I can try and see who's available.
Fonda, I meant to ask this question before in the working group. Does that have to be publicly advertised as well?
No, it can be, as it was explained to me by legal counsel, it's no different than a training session. You
Okay,
can't make any decisions, right? But certainly coming to some sort of a consensus that you would bring to an open meeting would be acceptable, in my understanding of that. It's basically you're working through, some proposal that you have in front of you.
So what are we looking at? Second, third week in February?
Third week.
Third week?
Is that third week?
The week of the 19th, is that it?
So the 19th is technically a holiday,
Yeah, that week.
and that might be spring break week, not that it matters for
Oh.
me, but I don't know if that matters for
We're too
anyone
old
else.
for spring break.
yeah, you're not going for a lot.
My fault, Fort Lauderdale days are very much over.
I bet you go.
The only day I can't do it during
And
that week
Wednesday
is
only.
Tuesday.
Is the remote possibility of
Is there any
doing it.
other-
Thursday, okay?
Thursday
Thursday
is the 22nd,
Is that all right?
Washington's birthday. It's great. This time I hope to be on time.
Is there a specific time you want to start looking at for the working group meeting?
Well, we probably should, maybe we can get to that earlier.
Yeah.
I should be, yeah, I should get that out of the way immediately.
Mr. Federis, as long as you're part of that, do you have a calendar preference, week, time?
You guys come up with something and I'll see how that ties into the calendar. Is there a day that's not good for this one?
Oh, I would think the 16th
Do
would
it on
be,
Friday, obviously.
Do we want to get a list of questions together for both of these developers first and get them answered prior to the meeting? So that we have-
A list of questions, I think you're right to put sure, this is what we're asking. Right, what they have here is what, are they gonna do these things or aren't they gonna do it?
I think that makes sense.
I just looked at the proposals real quick again.
Uh-huh.
Both of these proposals, in my mind, indicate that the developer is going to do it. Certainly hybrid indicates that as part of the public-private partnership, we suggest that the municipality assumes responsibility of storm, water, sewer infrastructure. Our commitment centers on acquiring the site, performing due diligence, and guiding the project through the governmental approval process. So to me, hybrid intends to this.
We asked them that specifically and then see what they say.
But I have a number of other questions. I don't know if
Sure.
you guys do, but I don't know if it's
You
worth
would.
getting those together, asking them, trying to get the answers before we all meet, so we have
I think there's value in doing
as
that.
much information as
I agree.
possible. I
because
can have
I
my
think
questions to you.
doing it ahead of
today.
time, only two people to call.
Right,
Unless somebody else sends in a late proposal. And
Do we venture to try to get all the questions out the door by the end of the week?
Circulated.
What does Scannell say in the very beginning?
Skinnell would expect the 1 million of public funds to immediately be dedicated further to the due diligence entitlement process to the extent feasible, with the developer taking control of the cost once a user is procured. So it doesn't necessarily say, it just says their
That's
funds
right.
got to be available for the due diligence, but it doesn't say that we're leading or they're leading. So I guess that would be,
I interpreted that as meaning that, especially in light of the earlier conversation, Skinnell might want to do that stuff themselves, but they want the county to pay for it. The ARPA funds to pay. for it.
agree, and I think that's our vision when we issued the
Yeah.
RFQ. And that would also match what Skinnell did in Skodak and their approvals in Fonda. So
Certainly Highbridge and the town of Schoharie did it all themselves.
yes, yeah.
so I think given what Ben has read, I think there are some clarifying questions that can be asked for both of them so that it's crystal clear what everybody
Yes.
is what the expectations are on both sides. So, yeah, I think Ben's got a really good idea. If anybody has a list of questions to go to the developers, if you get them to me, maybe end of week, so we'll say sometime on Friday, I can get them out the door. Depending on when I get them on Friday, hopefully on Friday, if not over the
Good.
weekend. And obviously, question number one will be that, and I'll give them a week to answer, which I think is fair. So that would make February 2nd. So I might suggest getting together sometime the week of February 5th. And obviously, if I get answers sooner, I'll be happy to distribute whenever I get them. I just don't want to send you 10 emails. I'll send you one with all the information.
So we'll just try to do something the week of February 5th.
If Mr. Federis feels that works for his schedule,
Yes, yeah, that works, except for maybe the 6th, Tuesday, the 6th. I wish Warner stayed, but I assume he'll, available. Well, yeah, I can't speak for him. I was just telling you what.
well, I can reach out to Warner if we come up with a time and see if it's okay with him. Maybe we do a time and an alternate.
Yes. All right, so what day are we gonna go for?
So the week of the 5th is a Monday. Mr. Federis says that the 6th Tuesday is not good for him, but.
Truth is, it's my birthday, my wife's taking me out. It's the 70th, it's a big one.
Well, we're not gonna be doing this all day.
I don't care. I don't know where she's taking me. It's my birthday. I only get one 70th.
I stayed in bed that morning.
Morning or, in the evening?
I gave you 4 other days.
It's whatever you folks want, to be honest with you. Whatever works for the committee, obviously.
So what do we say? I was busy laughing at Bill's point.
How about 9 o'clock,
What day? I'm sorry.
Monday?
Fifth?
No, didn't somebody say Monday? He said it's not good?
No, sixth.
Oh, the sixth was no good. Yeah, fine. IDA.
Here. Yes, I'll attempt to reserve it, and I guess if it's a problem, I'll let you know. And I'll send out a reminder, obviously. Yeah, do we have an alternate date?
7th?
That's Wednesday.
Same time, 9 a.m.
Bill may need to sleep in.
Those days have passed.
So it's either Monday or the 7th.
Okay. I'll get word out after I confirm with one. Yes.
All right.
And I'll send a confirming email as soon as I have that info.
We talked about, the on-site approvals for shovel readiness. The one thing we haven't really talked a lot about is the sewer and water infrastructure. I know we hit on it a little bit, but I think it's worth trying to figure out how that works and how much it's gonna cost, and there's probably, some engineering involved that's worth trying to get started on sooner than later. I assume that cost is gonna be fixed regardless of what happens at the site, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's engineering that's been done. But I think understanding if we want to start the engineering at some point sooner than later, how are we gonna pay for that? If there's some money left for the $1 million, that helps. And then what the process is between the village and the town and allowing that to happen, and all that stuff could take quite a while.
So that was mentioned in the MRB proposal at the end as part of the utilities. So if we just take them as a concept, all of the utilities are critical. If the board feels that we need to separate out water, sewer from the other utilities, then we can certainly do that.
Well, I think the developer can handle, power and things like that, but I think the sewer and water is a different engineer. We need like a Vermont or somebody to look at those types of things.
I think that's true, and it's probably gonna be a significant number as well. I mean, the actual installation. So, and I don't think they're gonna be eager to put that in their cost basis. So, there are a couple of funds in New York State that the town is looking at one of them. Is that New York Forward?
Fast New York.
Fast New York.
Yeah,
But
that's
I think-
probably gonna be our main
yeah.
source of grant funding for Shad Point would be patch. As a matter of fact, I have a call with ESD to really dig into that
Good.
program.
There's money left by the time we get there.
Well, I think that's why there's a sense of urgency on this.
Yeah.
The one thing I can say is that $100 million that's proposed, assuming that goes through the governor's budget and gets passed, and that won't be eligible to spend until April 1 or thereabouts, depending on when they actually pass the budget, right? Last year was a month late or so. So perhaps if we get all of our ducks in a row, we could have the makings of a grant proposal ready to go for April 1 or thereabouts. I can't.
This year?
Yeah.
I think for Fast New York, you need to have essentially a fully baked project that's approved and shovel ready, right?
Well, I'm thinking about track B now, right? So track B is the pre-engineering stuff. If we need a traffic study, let's say we need a traffic study. If we need archaeological, you're right on the track C is you got to have all of your ducks in a row before they give you money for actual build. We're not ready for that yet, but track B could be a way that we leverage the ARPA dollars to bring in state dollars to be able to get some of the other things done.
All right,
Thanks, Leo.
thanks, sir.
Take care, Leo.
Thanks, Leo. Have a good day, sir.
I just have one question on that proposal. There are things the thing that bothered me about the proposal is what he decided, or it stated that the following items are not included. A whole bunch of stuff that, I mean, that we would eventually have to pay for. All right, and I can't imagine why wetland delineation, traffic, all of that would not be included. So, while he doesn't want to nickel and dime us, I think the potential for additional cost beyond that $180,000 is a lot. So, I mean, I'm not an expert on this stuff by no means, but you know, I know about how to read a contract, and you got to watch, you know, the details. I mean, did you get that impression that some of these things?
It'll 100% be more than $180,000. So work outline.
Sure. So to your point about the developer doing this, I mean, yeah, the other side question is, supposing we go with them and the developer does, I'm sorry, he does this and the developer says, no, I don't like the way that this is done, this is wrong. So there's an extra effort. Is that possible?
100%.
Yeah, so
That's why if I'm the developer, I want to do it myself.
Right. That's sort of what I was thinking about. Sorry, Billy.
I mean, there's no question, MRB is very good. In fact, they know the Route 7 corridor, you know, because they've done 2 studies. In fact, one of them was initiated by William. So, but in any case,
Bye, Bill.
there's no sense in spending money we don't need to spend.
Yeah, and having to spend again, you know, and that's
Or even having somebody else have to spend.
Yeah, or having somebody else, and you pay for that anyway, somebody
Right.
pays for it anyway.
That's one of the reasons why I brought that to you today, is to get the conversation started, and MRB having some familiarity with the project already. It made some sense to start having the conversation.
No, I think what they gave us is food for thought. You know, these are the things he said has to be done. These are the things they say might have to be done. And I think when we get answers from the developer, we can say, you know, oh, well, what about this? This is what MRB thinks has to be done.
Yeah, well, yeah, one of the things, the wetlands he mentioned, there's probably not, and a lot of this depends on the DEC. If you have even a little tiny thing, they want to go in and make sure.
There's a pond on the site and there's a stream on the site that feeds the pond. So
Yeah.
I would assume that all the wetland stuff is 100% in play.
Yeah.
I mean, Highbridge alludes to that in their proposal,
Yeah.
that they're working around the existing wetlands on the
Yeah,
site.
and there is a prehistoric Indian site.
Mm.
Right? I think you
Something
can
about
see
that,
that
yeah,
from the miniature golf course. So, but again, that's interacting with the state agencies that are responsible for all of this. And that just is a process that has to work itself out.
Well, another piece of this is the 2 proposals are significantly different in what they're proposing. One proposing a bunch of little buildings and the other one is max build.
Mhm.
If it's true that there aren't many large warehouse possibilities around and there's money available for doing that,
Yeah.
it might be incentive for us to really focus on that.
Well, Scanell may have decided, well, let's do a max build proposal, and they've got enough language in there saying, well, you know, the final determination will be made when we get a tenant, that kind of thing. So I think they're just, why not go for the max and for right now, just as a placeholder.
But I think we want to push towards a max for no other reason than, because that's what I've been hearing too, is there aren't a lot of very large sites, right? So, we received, you know, the state sends out these periodic, looking for a site. And it's a rare occasion when I get one that is looking for a small site. They usually have, you know, they're looking for maximum acreage in large buildings. So, that, I think that's the play if you can do it, because I think I think you'll end up maximizing that space better if you can pull that off. Now, There's a million different things that have to go right to make that happen. But I think that should be our goal if we can pull it off.
All right, Joe. We're naming you as our,
Me, the right
Yeah.
one,
you know how to read contracts. It's very
how to
important.
read. Read comics all the time.
You're front and center, do you realize that?
What do you mean?
We'll take a look in the.
You're on television.
I'm not looking. Turn around and look at the
You
camera.
can go,
Has
hi,
that been
Mom.
on the whole time? Jeez.
We're on television.
All
So
right.
did we moved to adjourn, we're adjourned, right? Are we
No.
still recording?
Well,
You have to.
Okay.
move,
we have
but
We have
to,
to move to
I'll
adjourn. so we can
move
shut
that we
this.
adjourn
And I
at
second.
10:37.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none,